everybody, it's Courtney and I'm back here with another project using Trinity stamps. Today I'm going to be using the Coffee with Character stamp set as well as one of the sentiments from Hello Sweet Friend. And we're actually only going to be using one image from this large stamp set. And I'm going to be creating somewhat of a scene here, but I like to get the most out of my stamp sets, even maybe using them in a non-traditional way. So here I'm just starting with a piece of Nina Solar White 80-pound cardstock, and I'm just taking my T-square ruler here and a very light pencil line to kind of map out where I want to stamp my little donuts. I want to stamp 12 of them, 3 across, 4 down. So I'm just drawing very light pencil lines, that way I can stamp them as straight as possible. I'm going to go ahead and stamp my images with blackout ink by Ink on 3. And like I said, I'm going to stamp 3 across, and then I'll go ahead and mask these out. These masks are cut from Post-it notes. These are the full stick Post-it notes, and that way I could stamp just half of what I need and cut 2 at a time. And I just went ahead and masked them out as I went along and continued to stamp my little donuts down, 4 down. Once all of my stamping was complete, I went ahead and removed my masks, and I want to draw in like a bakery box, like the donuts are in a box, like a dozen donuts. So I'm starting off with my pencil in case I make any mistakes. Like I've told you guys before, I'm not an artist in any way. Typically, my scenes will consist of anything that I can do with a ruler or anything that I can trace. I just don't have any artistic ability. So like I said, I'm starting off with my pencil here, and you'll see, I won't show you this whole thing, but I'll go in and erase some lines and, you know, make sure that I have this perfect before I go in with my permanent Copic safe pen. We're going to keep this very simple, like I said. So once I had everything mapped out with my pencil, I will go ahead and go in with an EK Success journaling pen and kind of cover up all of those lines. Some of them I did change up a little bit, and I am going back and erasing as I go, making sure that everything is lined up perfectly. And next we'll move on to the Copic coloring. And I'm starting off with my C3 marker here. No, I lied. I'm starting off with my C1 marker. And I'm sorry, I'm off camera a little bit. I will notice it and move it over in a minute. But basically what I'm doing here is I'm just mapping out where my darkest areas will be, just to get the paper saturated a little bit. And this way, if I do make a mistake where I put my shadows initially, it's a lot easier to cover up the C1 than anything darker than that. So once I had all of my shadows laid out, I'll move on to my C5 marker. And I'm starting with these little flaps, I guess, on the inside of the box. And I'm just putting little tiny flicks all the way down with the C5. Then I'll move on to the C3 and extend those flicks out a little bit further, maybe about a third of the way for that little flap. Then go back in with my C1, and at first I was going to leave a little bit of white, but I decided to just color the whole thing in with the C1 and blend all of that out. I'll show you these 2 additional little flaps here on camera. Again, going in with my C5, just creating those little tiny flicks there all along the edge of the little flap of the box. And then moving on to the C3, extending those flicks out a little bit further. Now the C markers, and as well as any gray markers really, they blend really well where you don't have to start off with your lightest color. But like I said, I just wanted to map mine out just in case I made a mistake. And here I'm going in with that C3, extending that out to about a third or a half of the way. Then I'll go back in with that C1 and blend everything out. I pretty much colored the entire box the same way, just put my shadows in different areas, especially for that little top of the box. Next, we'll move on to the coloring of the donuts themselves. And here I'm going to start off with the donut itself. And I'm coloring some of these like a regular donut, and then some of them will be chocolate. I'm just starting off with my darkest color here, and I'm just putting shading underneath where the frosting kind of droops over it, and in the back where the little donut hole is. And then I'll go in with my lightest color and just blend that out. I'm also doing the same thing for the little chocolate donuts, just switching up the colors just a little bit. In the end, these are such tiny areas that you really couldn't tell the difference too much. And you could really get away with not doing any shading. You could go in with just a solid color and nobody would know the difference. Once my donuts were colored, I'll move on to the frosting. For this first one, I wanted to make it look like it had chocolate frosting. And I'm starting again with my darkest color, and I'm just putting shading on the back there where the donut hole is, and then on the bottom of the frosting where it's drooping over the donut. Then I'll move on to my mid-tone color and extend those out just a little bit, and then go in with my lightest color, leaving that highlight right there on the center of the donut because it's kind of a rounded object on top, so you want to make sure that you leave that highlight. I'm going to be coloring these all the same way, just obviously different color combinations. For my next one, this will be like a strawberry. And I'm, again, starting with my darkest color, putting those shading in the same area as I did with the first, blending that out with my mid-tone color, and then going in with my lightest color. For my next one, I wanted this to look like it was vanilla. And my darkest color is actually the lightest color that I used for the chocolate. And then I'll blend that out with the E53 and then finally the E50. For the bottom one, I'll be coloring this as if it was lemon, I guess. Using my Y markers, putting the shading in the same exact areas. I colored all of the donuts the same way, just kind of mixed up the order a little bit so that they weren't all looking exactly the same. Once my coloring was done, I took a brown colored pencil. This is one of the polychromos. Doesn't really matter what color you use. And I'm just adding little lines on just some of these donuts. This is just going to make it appear as if some of them have chocolate sprinkles on them. I just kind of randomly picked some. They don't have to be perfect. Obviously, there would not be chocolate sprinkles on a lemon donut, but oh well. And next, I'll go ahead and trim down my panel just a little bit. Well, first I cleaned up my messiness. I'm taking my colorless blender just with the very tip and kind of cleaning up some of those areas that I may have went out of the lines or my marker bled a little bit. Now you may have to go in a few times with this. Just make sure that it's dry before you go in again, or else you're just going to continue to spread that color. I did trim down my panel a little bit because obviously I measured totally wrong, and this way my little bakery box here will be centered on my card panel. Next, I'll move on to the sentiment, and I'm using the sentiment from my Sweet Friend stamp set. I just figured this sentiment goes well with the theme of my card. I line that up onto my acrylic black. I do stamp this off on a scrap piece of paper just to make sure it is lined up before stamping this onto my card panel itself. And I'm going to be stamping this with VersaFine Onyx Black ink right there on the lid of my little bakery box there. Now you can see there is a little line, probably because I had a cat hair or something on the stamp, but once my ink dries, I'll go in with a sand eraser and just fix that area up. I used my Tombow Mono Multi Glue to adhere this panel onto an A2 size note card, and went a little bit crazy with the sparkle and added it to every single one of the donuts. And that's the card for today, guys. So thanks a lot for stopping by, and hope you guys have a wonderful day. Bye.